वजह से हम बीच में हमें रुकना पड़ा था, वो बिकॉज ऑफ हेवी टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लम आ गई थी। और इसी दौरान हमें रियलाइजमेंट हुआ कि कितने सारे लोग कुछ ना कुछ करना चाहते हैं वर्ड ऑफ गॉड को लेके, मास को लेके, बट कहीं ना कहीं किसी कमी की वजह से, जैसे कि इंटरनेट का सुविधा नहीं, जैसे कि कुछ मटेरियल नहीं होने के कारण से कनेक्ट नहीं हो पा रहे हैं। और हम यहाँ पे खुशनसीब हैं कि जब हमारे पास ये सारी सुविधाएं हैं फिर भी कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ हो रही है। आइए, ये जब वर्चुअल होली मास जब हम अभी कर रहे हैं, इन सारे चीज़ों के लिए हम प्रार्थना करें, क्योंकि सारे चीज़, चाहे वो इंटरनेट फैसिलिटी हो, वाईफाई फैसिलिटी हो, ऑडियो रिकॉर्डिंग हो या इंस्ट्रूमेंट हो, ये सारे चीज़ प्रभु के दिए हुए हैं। हम उनके बिना कुछ भी नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि उनके कहे बिना हमारा बाल नहीं झड़ सकता, तो हम उनके बिना ये सारी चीज़ कैसे कर पाए। और कहीं ना कहीं ये रुकावटें हमें मजबूत करने के लिए होती है, हमें प्रभु को और करीब से जानने का मौका रहता है। ये वो हमें कहीं ना कहीं अपग्रेड करते हैं। इतना कुछ देने के बावजूद अगर इतना ऊपर नीचे होता, हमारा कहीं पे लैक है। हाँ प्रभु, आज के इस मिस्सा के दौरान हम जितने भी लोग हैं, जितने भी प्रीस्ट हैं, जितने भी नन्स हैं, जितने भी पास्टर्स हैं, जितने भी लोग आपके वचनों को आगे बढ़ाना चाहते हैं इस कोविड-19 पैंडेमिक के दौरान, उन सारे लोगों को आपके चरणों तले रखते हैं इस मिस्सा बलिदान में। हाँ प्रभु, आप जितने भी इंस्ट्रूमेंट लग रहे हैं, जितने भी वाईफाई फैसिलिटी है, इंटरनेट प्रोवाइडर्स हैं, प्रभु आपका मूल्यवान रक्त हम सबों के ऊपर उंडे और हम सबों को शुद्ध कर। हाँ प्रभु, हम सबों को शुद्ध कर, ताकि आपके बच्चे इस वर्चुअल दुनिया में, इस वर्चुअल जोन में, एक वर्चुअल जनरेशन जो है प्रभु, हम ये वर्चुअलिटी को एक माध्यम बना सके, आपकी महिमा कर सके। यस लॉर्ड, सिर्फ आप ही को ग्लोरीफाई कर सके इस वर्चुअल माध्यम से, इस वर्चुअल दुनिया से। इतने सारे लोग इस वर्चुअल दुनिया में कैद हो गए। हाँ प्रभु, आज यही वर्चुअल मास के द्वारा जितने भी जगह हम कनेक्ट हो पा रहे हैं इस पैंडेमिक के दौरान, हाँ प्रभु आप सारी चीज़ों को शुद्ध करें। और ये मास के दौरान हम विश्वास करते हैं कि आप जिस तरह से मेरे जीवन को, हम सबों का जीवन को आपने ट्रांसफॉर्म किया है, ये एक वर्चुअल दुनिया को भी आप ट्रांसफॉर्म कर। लेट योर नेम बी द फर्स्ट नेम इन दिस virtual zone. Let's make sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. As we are gathered, और जो कुछ भी मैंने बोला, उन सारी चीज़ों को याद करते हुए आज का ये मास हम दोबारा शुरू करते हैं।
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all.
And with your spirit.
Jai Yesu ki.
Jai Yesu.
And good morning and welcome to this morning Eucharistic celebration. We are on the 5th Monday of Lent, very close to the celebration of the Passion of the Lord. Let's thank God for this wonderful moment of grace He has given us, especially in these troubled moments in the human history, in our lifetime. We pray, may the Passion of the Lord bring a newness to our life and to the world. To celebrate this Eucharist in a worthy manner, let us call to mind our sins and ask God to forgive those moments when we have gone away from His presence. I confess to Almighty God
And to my brothers and sisters
that I have greatly sinned in my thoughts and my words, in what I have done and in what I have failed to do, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. Therefore I ask Blessed Mary, a Virgin, all the angels and saints, and to you, my brothers and sisters, to pray for me to the Lord our God. May Almighty God have mercy on us, forgive us our sins, and bring us to everlasting life.
Amen.
Lord, have mercy.
Lord, have mercy.
Christ, have mercy.
Christ, have mercy.
Lord, have mercy.
Lord, have mercy.
Let us pray. During this Mass, we offer this Mass for the departed soul of Sister Mary George. O God, by whose wondrous grace we are enriched with every blessing, grant us so to pass from former ways to the newness of life, that we may be made ready for the glory of heavenly kingdom. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever.
Amen.
In today's first reading, we will hear about a beautiful and God-fearing woman, Susanna. When two elders attempt to seduce Susanna, she resists to sin in the sight of the Lord, and she is rescued by the Lord.
First reading from the book of Daniel, chapter 13, verses 1 to 9, 15 to 17, 19 to 30, and 33 to 62. There was a man living in Babylon whose name was Joachim. He married the daughter of Hilkiah, named Susanna, a very beautiful woman and one who feared the Lord. Her parents were righteous and had trained their daughter according to the law of Moses. Joachim was very rich and had a fine garden adjoining his house. The Jews used to come to him because he was the most honored of them all. That year, two elders from the people were appointed as judges. Concerning them, the Lord had said, "Wickedness came forth from Babylon, from elders who were judges, who were supposed to govern the people. These men were frequently at Joachim's house, and all who had a case to be tried came to them there. When the people left at noon, Susanna would go into her husband's garden to walk. Every day the two elders used to see her, going in and walking about, and they began to lust for her. They suppressed their consciences and turned away their eyes from looking to heaven, or remembering their duty to administer justice. Once, while they were watching for an opportune day, she went in as before with two maids, and wished to in the garden, for it was a hot day. No one was there except the two elders who had hidden themselves and were watching her. She said to her maids, "Bring me olive oil and ointments, and shut the garden doors so that I can bathe." When the maids had gone out, the two elders got up and ran to her. They said, "Look, the garden doors are shut, and no one can see us. We are burning with desire for you. So give your consent and lie with us. If you refuse, we will testify against you that a young man was with you, and this was why you sent your maids away." Susanna groaned and said, "I am completely trapped, for if I do this, it will mean death for me. If I do not, I cannot escape your hands. I choose not to do it. I will fall into your hands rather than sin in the sight of the Lord." Then Susanna cried out with a loud voice, and the two elders shouted against her. And one of them ran and opened the garden doors. When the people in the house heard the shouting in the garden, they rushed in at the side door to see what had happened to her. And when the elders told their story, the servants felt very much ashamed, for nothing like this had ever been said about Susanna. The next day, when the people gathered at the house of her husband Joachim, the two elders came, full of their wicked plot to have Susanna put to death. In the presence of the people they said, "Send for Susanna, daughter of Hilkiah, the wife of Joachim." So they sent for her. And she came with her parents, her children, and all her relatives. Those who were with her and all who saw her were weeping. Then the two elders stood up before the people and laid their hands on her head. Through her tears she looked up towards heaven, for her heart trusted in the Lord. The elders said, "While we were walking in the garden alone, this woman came in with two maids, shut the garden doors, and dismissed the maids. Then a young man who was hiding there came to her and lay with her. We were in a corner of the garden, and when we saw this wickedness, we ran to them. Although we saw them embracing, we could not hold the man, because he was stronger than we, and he opened the doors and got away. We did, however, seize this woman and asked who the young man was, but she would not tell us. These things we testify, because they were elders of the people and judges. The assembly believed them and condemned her to death. Then Susanna cried out with a loud voice and said, "O eternal God, you know what is secret and are aware of all things before they come to be. You know that these men have given false evidence against me, and now I am to die, though I have done none of the wicked things that they have charged against me." The Lord heard her cry. Just as she was being led off to execution, God stirred up the Holy Spirit of a young lad named Daniel, and he shouted with a loud voice, "I want no part in shedding this woman's blood." All the people turned to him and asked, "What is this you are saying?" Taking his stand among them, he said, "Are you such fools, O Israelites, as to condemn a daughter of Israel without examination and without learning the facts? Return to court, for these men have given false evidence against her." So all the people hurried back, and the rest of the elders said to him, Come, sit among us and inform us, for God has given you the standing of an elder. Daniel said to them, Separate them far from each other, and I will examine them. When they were separated from each other, he summoned one of them and said to him, You old relic of wicked days, your sins have now come home, which you have committed in the past, pronouncing unjust judgments, condemning the innocent and acquitting the guilty. Though the Lord said, You shall not put an innocent and righteous person to death. Now, then if you really saw this woman, tell me this. Under what tree did you see them being intimate with each other? He answered, Under a mastic tree. And Daniel said, Very well, this lie has cost you your head. For the angel of God has received the sentence from God and will immediately cut you in two. Then the whole assembly raised a great shout and blessed God, who saves those who hope in him. And they took action against the two elders, because out of their own mouths Daniel had convicted them of bearing false witness. They did to them as they had wickedly planned to do to their neighbor. Acting in accordance with the law of Moses, they put them to death. Thus innocent blood was spared that day. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Shepherd of my soul, I give you full control. Wherever you may lead, I will follow. I have made a choice to listen to your voice. Wherever you may lead, I will go. Be it in a quiet passion or by a gentle stream, the shepherd of my soul is by my side. Should I face a mighty mountain or a valley dark and deep, the shepherd of my soul will be my guide. Shepherd of my soul, oh, you have made me whole. Whenever I hear you call, how my tears flow. How I feel your love, how I want to serve. I gladly give my heart to you, O Lord. Be it in a quiet passion or by a gentle stream, the shepherd of my soul is by my side. Should I face a mighty mountain or a valley dark and deep, the shepherd of my soul will be my guide. Shepherd of my soul.
Let us arise for the gospel acclamation. Now is the favorable time. This is the day of salvation. In today's gospel reading, the scribes and Pharisees bring before Jesus a woman caught in adultery, condemning her according to the law of Moses. But Jesus rather says that anyone who is without sin may stone first.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At daybreak, he appeared in the temple again, And as all the people came in, he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and Pharisees brought a woman along who had been caught committing adultery, and making her stand there in full view of everybody, they said to Jesus, Master, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. And Moses has ordered us in the law to condemn women like this to death by stoning. What have you to say? They asked him to test him, looking for something to use against him. But Jesus bent down and started writing on the ground with his finger. And as they persisted their question, he looked up and said, If there is one of you who has not sinned, let him be the first to throw the stone at her. Then he bent down and wrote on the ground again. When they heard this, they went away one by one, beginning from the eldest, until Jesus was left alone with the woman, who remained standing there. He looked up and said, Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No, sir, she replied. Neither do I condemn you. Jesus, go away and do not sin anymore. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise
Praise to the Lord Jesus
The
Christ.
words of the Gospel, wipe away our sins and offenses. My dear brothers and sisters, when we are trained during our theological studies, when we are preparing for confessions, it is one of the major things that has been taught to us. When you sit in the confession, you are in place of Christ, and you need to have the character of Christ and the Father. That is to say, you have to be a merciful Father and a just judge. In today's both reading, there are two women, Susanna and the woman caught in adultery, two women in the first reading and the Gospel. And what we see is the mercy and the justice of God in these both readings. God is a just God, is a just judge, and that has been beautifully narrated by the incident in the Susanna's life. And the mercy of God outflows in and through the life of Jesus when he let the woman go free and seeing her inner hearts. Jesus coming out of the Mount of Olives in the whole night of praying, and he comes to the temple in the morning. It's a newness of life, at least to all humanity, is being shared to all of us in this gospel. Let's pray. May all of us, in our own behavior with others, may be always merciful like the Father and just in our dealings. May God bless us. Amen.
Yours as we stand at the table you set. Yours as we eat the bread our hearts can't forget. We are the signs of your life with us here. We are yours.
Pray, my brothers and sisters, that our sacrifice may be acceptable to God, the Almighty Father.
May the Lord accept the sacrifice at your hands
For the
for the
praise
praise and glory of His name, for our good and good of all His holy church.
Grant, we pray, O Lord, that preparing to celebrate the holy mysteries, we may bring before you the fruit of bodily penance and joyful purity of heart. Through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit,
Lift up your hearts.
lift them up to the Lord.
Let us give thanks to the Lord our God.
It is right and just.
It is truly right and just, our duty and our salvation, always and everywhere to give you thanks, Lord, Holy Father, Almighty and eternal God. For through the saving power of your Son, the whole world has received a heart to confess the infinite power of your majesty. Since by the wondrous power of the cross, your judgment on the world is now revealed, and the authority of Christ crucified. And so, Lord, with all the angels and saints, we to give you thanks, as with one exaltation we acclaim. You are indeed holy, O Lord, the fount of all holiness. Make holy, therefore, these gifts, we pray, by sending down your Spirit upon them like the dewfall, so that they may become for us the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. At the time he was betrayed and entered willingly into his passion, he took bread. Giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take this, all of you, and eat of it. For this is my body, which will be given up for you."
My Lord, my God.
In a similar way, when supper was ended, he took the chalice, and once more giving thanks, he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take this, all of you, and drink from it. For this is the chalice of my blood, the blood of the new and eternal covenant, which will be poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in memory of me."
My Lord, my God.
The mystery of faith. Ever Savior of the world, oh, by your cross and resurrection, you have set us free. Therefore, as we celebrate the memorial of his death and resurrection, we offer you, Lord, the bread of life and the chalice of salvation, giving thanks to the elders worthy to be in your presence and minister to you. Humbly we pray that partaking the body and blood of Christ, we may be gathered into one by the Holy Spirit. Remember, Lord, your church spread throughout the world and bring her to the fullness of charity, together with Francis, our Pope, Anil, our Bishop, and all the clergy, religious and laity. Remember also our parents, brothers and sisters, friends and well-wishers. Especially we pray for Sister Mary George. And all who have fallen asleep in the hope of the resurrection, and all have died in your mercy. Welcome them into the light of your face. Have mercy on us all, we pray, that with the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God, blessed Joseph, with the blessed apostles, and all the saints who have pleased you throughout the ages, we may merit to be co-heirs to eternal life, may praise and glorify you through your Son, Jesus Christ. Through him and with him and in him, O God Almighty Father, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, all glory and honor is yours forever and ever. At the Saviour's command and formed by divine teaching, we dare to say,
Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Lord, from evil.
deliver us, Lord, we pray, from every evil. Graciously grant peace in our days, that by the help of your mercy we may be always free from sin and safe from all distress, as we wait the blessed hope and the coming of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever.
O Jesus Christ, who said to the apostles, peace I leave you, my peace I give. Look not on our sins, but in the faith of the church, and graciously grant her peace and unity in accordance with your will. Will you reign forever and ever?
Amen.
The peace of the Lord be with you always.
And with your spirit.
Let's offer each other the sign of peace.
Lamb of God,
You take away the sins of the world, have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world, have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world, grant us peace.
Behold the Lamb of God, behold him who takes away the sins of the world. Blessed are those called to the supper of the Lamb.
Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter my mouth, but only say a word, and my soul shall be healed.
May the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ keep us safe for eternal life.
since we are participating in a virtual Holy Mass and we won't be able to receive the Holy Communion, but let us now remember when we received the Holy Communion the best moments when we received your body and blood. Remembering those moments, let us participate in this spiritual communion and say this act of spiritual communion together. O Immaculate Queen of heaven and earth, Mother of God and mediator of every grace, I believe that your dearly beloved Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, is truly, really, and substantially contained in the most holy sacrament. I love him above all things and long to receive him in my heart. Since now I cannot receive him sacramentally, so be so good to place him spiritually in my soul and never permit me to be separated from him. Amen.
Make me clean and holy like you are. Make me pure, purest wine. Make me new
Dominus Aquinas together. I
Thank you, Lord, Almighty Father, everlasting God, for having been pleased, through no merit of mine, but of your great mercy alone, to feed me, a sinner, and your unworthy servant, with the precious body and blood of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. I pray that this Holy Communion may not be for my judgment and condemnation, but for my pardon and salvation. Let this Holy Communion be to me an armor of faith and a shield of goodwill, a cleansing of all vices and a rooting out of all evil desires. May it increase love and patience, humility and obedience, and all virtues. May it be a firm defense against the evil designs of all my visible and invisible enemies, a perfect quieting of all the desires of soul and body. May this Holy Communion bring about a perfect union with you, the one true God, and at last enable me to reach eternal bliss when you will call me. I pray that you bring me, a sinner, to the indescribable feast where you, with your Son and the Holy Spirit, are to your saints true light, full blessedness, everlasting joy, and perfect happiness, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
We'll say the prayer for priests of Saint Teresa of Lisieux. O Jesus,
Eternal priest, keep your priests within the shelter of your sacred heart, where none may touch them. Keep unstained their anointed hands, which daily touch your sacred body. Keep unsullied their lips, daily purpled with your precious blood. Keep pure and unearthly their hearts, sealed with the sublime mark of the priesthood. Let your holy love surround them and shield them from the world's contagion. Bless their labors with abundant fruit, and may the souls to whom they minister be their joy and consolation here and in heaven, their beautiful and everlasting crown. Amen.
Let us pray. Strengthened by the blessing of your sacraments, we pray, Lord, that through them we may constantly be cleansed of our faults. By following Christ, hasten our steps to upward towards you. Through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
The Lord be with you.
And with your
May
spirit.
Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Go in the love of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Son of God, you called us to your table. Son of God, in you we are made one. Lord Jesus Christ, take us by the hand. Lord Jesus Christ, be with us today. Son of God, you leave us not alone. Son of God, in you we trust and hope. Lord Jesus Christ, take us by the hand. Lord Jesus Christ, be with us today. Son of God, you light up our below. Son of God, you make our burden light. Lord Jesus Christ, take us by the hand. Lord Jesus Christ, be with us today.
O Lord, help us to be faithful to you and resist evil. Open our eyes to right and wrong, and guided by your Spirit, may we choose the right in spite of hardships that come our way. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from all that is evil. Amen.
Mother Mary, we ask your intercession and accompany us in this journey. Hail Mary,
Full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary,
Full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary,
Full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Memorare.
Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession, was left unaided. Inspired with this confidence, I fly to thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen.
All glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Virgin Mary,
Pray for us.
Saint Joseph,
Pray for us.
Saint Jose Maria Escriva,
Pray for us.
Saint Mother Teresa,
Pray for us.
all the angels and saints,
Pray for us.
let us make sign of the cross.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, friends, and have a blessed Lent ahead.